Hi everyone, this is a basic overview of the OnGrid tool, including its various sections and how to get around. This video is geared towards beginner users of the tool, as well as intermediate users who want to review the basics. We're going to begin in the Settings and Support sheet, as you can see at the bottom left. Now, this sheet starts with settings, but initially you won't need to worry about these, and you can take a look at them later on. However, if you scroll about halfway, you'll be at the support section. Here you can see what support resources and options are available to you. For example, videos, conference calls, and so forth. And again, you can review these later on. Moving on to the input sheet. This sheet is for inputting your project information, including customer information, electric rates and usage, and so forth. It's the most important sheet, and you'll be spending most of your time here. As you're entering in information, you can save your work here, where it says Save Customer Data, and then Load from here, which says Load Customer Data. You should enter in your information in order from top to bottom, and that's because each section depends on the section above it. You'll also notice that some cells are yellow, some are orange, and some are green. If you look at the color legend at the top left, that means that you should always change or verify the yellow cells. You can leave the orange cells default if you want to, but the green cells can't be modified. And that's because they're calculated results based on what you enter in the yellow and orange cells. Now I'm going to briefly go over each of these sections and what they're for. Customer information is for basic details of your customer, including name, customer type, city and state, and so forth. The next section, electrical rates and usage, you'd essentially enter in the customer's utility, rate schedule, and monthly usage. OnGrid tracks utility rate data for you, so you won't have to enter that in. In the next section, you choose the weather station closest to your customer in terms of both climate and latitude, and then where the panels are facing. And this is to help the tool calculate production. If you're wondering how shading factors in, we have these two shading sheets down here, one for each array of modules. Most of the time you wouldn't actually be editing anything here. Instead, you transfer data from a shading measurement device through this button here, and you can check this out later on. Going back to the input sheet. The next section is for sizing the system, and by default the tool will size the system for you, and does that by trying to offset as much of the bill as possible without going over. For this project, it figures that a 9 kilowatt system will do that. Now you can also manually size the system here in the cell. So you put in 5, it will be a 5 kilowatt system instead. Or you can directly input the number of modules and inverters here in the cell. And you put in 25. So, now if you want to go back to automatic system sizing, enter 0 in the cell, and it'll go back. Now for the incentive section. In addition to utility rate data, OnGrid also tracks incentive information at the state and federal level. But you want to make sure the tool has the right assumptions. In this case, there are no incentives for this customer, besides the federal investment tax credit, which the tool includes by default. So that looks good, and if everything looks good, then you can move along. For system pricing, you can see the default price here is $7.25 per watt. If you're wondering why it's so high, that's because it comes from this pricing sheet down here. The $7.25 figure is computed from the line items in this pricing sheet. Some of the individual line items here are outdated. For example, this $3.68 cent per watt module, and that's why it came up with such a high price. Now you're welcome to change numbers here in the sheet, add items, remove them, or change them until you have a good price and setup. But if you already know your dollar per watt and you don't need to compute it, you can go back to the input sheet and simply enter it in like so. The cell turns purple to let you know pricing sheet is no longer used. Tool will use whatever you enter in. For the rest of the pricing section, you can see how the incentives are applied to yield the net cost for your customer. The next two sections, financing and sales contract inputs, are not visible. And that's because we're in light view, as you can see at the top. Light view is for doing a quick analysis of a project, usually residential. And it's also good for learning the basics of this input sheet. These two sections here are a bit too complicated for light view, which is why they're not shown. But if you want to see them, as well as all the other options the tool has in the input sheet, scroll to the top, then click on Convert to Full View here on the top left. Now each of these sections have 4 buttons next to them, a dash, 1, 2, and 3. Pressing 1 will open its section up to a basic level of detail, similar to light view. Pressing 2 will show more options in detail, and 3 will have the most. If you want to hide the section, click on the dash. If you want to open every section up to a certain level, you can click on these numbers here next to the color legend. For example, click on 3 will open every section to level 3. But with all of these options available, it might get a little overwhelming, in which case you can go back to light view or keep each section at level 1. So, now notice that the financing section is available. When you open that up, you can see which financing options your customer can go with. For example, home equity loan. After choosing an option, you can match the terms with an institution's offering, like for example, maybe 20 years for 5%. And finally, we arrive at the sales contract inputs. This is where you set the terms for the sales contract. But if you're only interested in sales proposals, you can skip this section. After entering everything in, you can take a look at the financials for this project here in the overview sheet. This includes a 25-year timeline used to calculate rate of return. And if you scroll down, charts and graphs for the selected loan program. If you're satisfied with these numbers, you can then generate a proposal for your customer. Just scroll up and click here. This is print proposal. Or in the input sheet, let's scroll up again and click here, print proposal. And do that. Now you can choose which proposal to generate. Since this project models a loan, you can choose the line of credit or loan proposal. And I'm going to generate that. And as it says, please wait. And it can take a while, but that's working. And it's done. Now you can review it, print it out, or email it to your customer. Hopefully they'll help you make the sale. And that's about it. That's all there is to tool overview.